Hello, this is Lawrence of Learning While Practicing. In this section, we will discuss the tools that we can use to aid us in coding, and these tools are called IDEs or Integrated Development Environment. Also, we will revisit the concept of the import statement and then together with the package statement and some fundamental concepts that needs to be understood in writing your Java codes like comments, semicolons, blocks, and whitespaces. We will also talk about the two major classification of a Java data type, the primitive types and reference data types. And then, at the latter part of this section, we will revisit the concept of the scanner object. All right, let's talk about an IDE. An IDE is a third-party software that you can install on top of your JDK. If you wanted to use a product from IBM, then Eclipse is the tool for you. NetBeans is a product from Oracle, and IntelliJ is a product from JetBrains. These are the top three IDEs available in the market at the time that this video is recorded. Okay, so the difference between the three are their manufacturers or their providers. If you wanted to install Eclipse, you might need to install the JDK first before installing Eclipse. For NetBeans, we will take a look at the installers later, and you will see that there is a version of NetBeans that has a ready plugin, meaning when you download the NetBeans installer, it already has a plugin for the JDK. So you could actually download NetBeans by itself. Okay, it already has the JDK inside. And then if you want to install IntelliJ, again, we need to download it first. So in Google, we can go to Eclipse download. Okay, let's Google that and go to eclipse.org. And then you could get the latest version from this landing page. At the time that this video was recorded, the latest version from Eclipse is 2020-03. So you just need to download this and then install it afterwards on your either Windows or Mac or Linux machine. For IntelliJ, we do the same. No? Just type in IntelliJ and then download. Click on the JetBrains page or link, and then you can choose either the Ultimate or the Community version. The Community version is 100% free. It's open source, but the Ultimate version comes only with a free trial. And you will see the difference between the Ultimate and the Community edition right here. Okay, so if you wanted to pursue coding and let's say you wanted to shift to Android development, you can get Android Studio. And Android Studio is actually based from IntelliJ. It's also a product of JetBrains. Okay, and the third one is NetBeans. So we go to netbeans.org. And here's the landing page of NetBeans. You can click on download. Okay, at the time that this video is recorded, the latest NetBeans version is 11.3. But we need to consider the existing JDK. Right? So this is the side where you need to do some research on NetBeans. Since my JDK is Java 8, so 1.8. Okay, I'm using Java 1.8. The suggested NetBeans version should be 8.2. So we need to scroll down a bit, go to the older releases section, click here, and then let's choose 8.2. Okay, you need to check what platform you're using. So by default, it will check it for you. I'm using Mac, so it's there already, and also the language that you prefer. So NetBeans has a support for different languages. Now, I would probably recommend this part right here because this one comes in with a full bundle. So If you just want the minimal bundle, you can choose this. You notice that it has already a plugin for JavaFX and Java SE, as well as the NetBeans Platform SDK. But if you want to have more plugins, you can choose this one. And the best thing about NetBeans, all of these plugins are all free. So if you click download right here, the download will start for you. Now, I've already downloaded NetBeans ahead of time and have already installed it. And the nice thing about these installers that you get from their website is there's no need for you to configure them. So just download your preferred IDE and then install them, and then they're ready for use. Just launch them. In the next video, we will talk about how to create our Java code from an IDE. So we will use NetBeans for this video. See you in the next video. Happy coding. Hello, this is Lawrence of Learning While Practicing. For this video, we will try to create our first NetBeans project. And then we will discuss the concepts of Java comments, semicolons, blocks, and whitespaces. In the previous video, we have already talked about some IDEs like Eclipse, NetBeans, and IntelliJ. But all throughout this section and all throughout these videos, we will be using NetBeans. Feel free to use any of your preferred IDE. I've already launched my NetBeans, and as you will see, this is the initial look and feel of your IDE. You will always have this startup page every time you launch it. If you don't want to see this tab right here, you can choose to uncheck this one. Okay. Now on the left part, you will see that there are three default tabs. You have the projects tabs, the files tabs, and the services tabs. The projects tabs will show all the existing projects that is created and that was used in your NetBeans IDE. So we will create our first project. So click on File and then New Project. All right. So there are several categories to choose from. You can create a project of type Java SE, Java FX, Java Web, Java EE, HTML5, Java ME. You can also create a Maven project, a PHP project, a Groovy project, C++ project, and some other types of projects. These are the types of projects that we can create under NetBeans. So since we're just on the introductory course, we will just stick with Java or Java SE. And there are four types of projects. We can create a Java-based application, a class library. We can also open up a pre-created project with existing source code. This means, let's say you have used a previous IDE before, and you wanted to shift your project from that previous IDE, you can use this one. Or you can create a GUI-based Java project that has user interface like buttons and frames and those kinds of stuff. But for now, we will just stick with Java application. Click on the next button. Okay, and then you need to key in your project name. Let's call this Hello NetBeans and then project. So by convention, we normally put a suffix PRJ or project, PROJ or PRJ or the entire word project at the last part of our project name. And then we can let this have its check, the checkbox right here. We can put a check right here if you wanted to create the main class or the public static void main. For now, I will remove this one so that we will create it manually. And then click Finish. And then here's our first project. Okay, so the standard library that is embedded in our project is JDK8 API. And then the next step is for us to create our source code. You can right-click on this part or you can right-click on this part. Just right-click and then click on Java class. We will now create our first class. Let's call this Hello World. And then we will just leave this for now, package. As you can see that NetBeans Projects has a folder, Hello NetBeans Project. This is the name of the project. And then we will have an SRC folder inside. And then whatever file name you write here, that file will automatically be, whatever class name that you write here, will create the file on inside the SRC folder. Okay, so let's click finish. And there we go. Okay, so if you want to type in the main method, let's type in PSVM and then press tab. The cool part about NetBeans is there are some easier way for you to, or shortcuts, should we say, in creating your main method. So for NetBeans, you just need to type PSVM, press tab, and then it will open up to public static void main. Okay, let's type SOUT for system.out.println, and then let's press tab again. And then there you go. It will open up to system.out.println. Let's type in hello NetBeans world. Okay. Now, it's always best to save it, but for NetBeans, if you run it, it will automatically save it for you. So right-click and then run file. Here's your output right there. So that's our first Hello World program. Now, let's try to examine the directory structure. As I've mentioned, you have Projects tab. This is the view for developers if you want to see the project itself. If you want to see them in a File Explorer view, you can choose to open your Finder window or your File Explorer if you're using Windows, or you could also look at this tab. So if we open this up, you will see the structure. Let's compare that with our Finder. In the Finder tab, or for those who are using Windows, you can open File Explorer. You have NetBeans Project in your home folder. And then you'll see that you have NetBeans Project. There you go. See the view right here? It follows the same view right here. All right? But it also, it will just group all folders first. So you have the build folder. We don't need to edit anything on this because this one will be created every time you build your project. So when you say build, it means it will compile your project first. Okay, and then you also have NB project. This is off limits. Let's not edit anything from this folder because this is where NetBeans saves its configuration per project. And then you also have the SRC or the source folder. This is where your Java source file are hidden or are saved. Okay. And then there are other two text files like build XML. Okay. And you also have manifest. We will discuss the manifest file later. Now, if you want to have a wider or a bigger view of your editor window, you can double click or double tap any of the tab and then double tap it first to put it back. Now, if you accidentally close any of these windows, let's say I've accidentally closed projects, don't worry. You can always open that up under the window tab. Then we can open projects again. There we go. Okay, so you have your projects, files. Now, services are the services that is available for NetBeans. So if you see here, you have the database services. We will use this later on our last section. As you can see, the database Java DB is already embedded. Now, if you want to use other types of DBMS, you could simply right-click here and add a new connection. And you also have servers that are pre-installed. Okay, so you can add a server and choose any of the um, servers that you want to use. You can use Apache Tomcat or Glassfish. And then other services for NetBeans. Okay, for Selenium testing, you have it here. Okay, so I'm going to quit NetBeans now. And later, when we come back to our next video, we will discuss the concept of comments, semicolons, blocks, and white spaces. Hello, this is Lawrence of Learning While Practicing. In this video, we will continue the discussion on comments, semicolons, blocks, and white spaces. All right, let's create another project and let's continue the discussion on some of the cool stuff that we have for NetBeans. So I'll remove the check right here for main class. Okay. If you've already created a project and you wanted to change the project name, you could right click here and you can choose rename. Okay. So let's try to rename our project so that we can give it a more descriptive name. Let's say test person PRJ. Okay. You could also click here so that the folder will be renamed as well. Because if you don't, just the project name and the folder, and it will not reflect on the folder name. So let's also rename the project folder. Okay, so there we go. And if you double check it on your Finder window, okay, let's go to NetBeans. You have Test Person Project or PRJ. All right, let's create two classes. Okay, remember our class in the previous section? We create a class called Person. All right, let's click Finish right here. Okay, and in the Person class, we have two variables, string name and int age. Okay? All right, and then let's create another class called person. So right click, new Java class. We call this test person. Okay. Now inside my test person, I'm going to create, let's say the main method psvm, and let me create two person object p1 new person. Okay. Now I'm going to create the second person p2 new person. This time I will pass some values. Lawrence, see at age 20. Okay. Now, as you can see, we have a red marking here. Now, the nice thing about IDEs is it's intelligent enough to acknowledge or to look for compilation errors. And there are three ways where you can see them. On the left-hand side, you'll see a flag, a red flag right here, stating the line number where the error is at. And then if you point your mouse pointer there, it will simply display the compilation error that you will see if you compile this using a command prompt or a terminal window. Another one is by hovering on the red underline on the actual line of code. And of course, you'll see a red flag right here stating the number of errors that you have for the entire program. And this is where the actual error is at. Okay, so there are four locations where you can see that there's an error. All right, NetBeans is just trying to be sure that you're going to see the error. Now, obviously, the error that we're having right now is concerns the constructor. We're trying to create two objects, P1 and P2, in two different ways. So all we need to do is to insert a constructor right here. Now, NetBeans has a way for us to automatically create some code segments for you, like a constructor. If you right-click here, and then you see that we have an option here, Insert Code. we can insert a constructor right here. Okay, so we will create an empty constructor. So I don't have to check that one. There you go. That empty constructor is for the first one. Another constructor that we will create is the one that accepts a string name and an int age. So there, we already have two constructors created. Therefore, our error right here should go away. Oops, because it won't go because there, I should have a string and an int. Okay, so it's all gone now. All right, now, in the previous section, we've talked about encapsulation. Now, the problem with manually typing the setters and getters is this. If you have two variables, it means you are expected to write two setters and two getters. That's a total of 4 methods. Okay, so if you have 5 instance variables, you're supposed to create 10 methods. 5 for setters, 5 for getters, and that's quite a lot. So in NetBeans, there's a way for us to automatically create our setters and getters. So right here, right-click, insert code. We can write just getters or just setters, or we can automatically create both. So I'm going to create both setters and getters. Generate, and there you go. Okay, so let me show you, show it to you again. Right-click, insert code, setters and getters. Now, we can also choose to encapsulate fields. Okay, now, if we choose to encapsulate fields, what will happen? It will declare our fields private. Okay, so this is how we do encapsulation. We declare our instance variable private, and then we prepare a pair of setters and getters for each one. All right? Now, if you notice that in each line of code, we have a semicolon. Semicolon is a way for us to end a declaration or a statement. So if I remove this, there is an error. Okay? If I remove this one, there is an error. So there should be a semicolon at the end of each statement. Now, what if we put a semicolon right here? That one will also cause an error. See that the yellow part right there? That's actually more of not really an error, but a warning. Okay? It says that this line of code right here until the begin curly brace has been terminated. And terminating this line is not correct because this is not really an entire line. Okay? Because a begin should always have an end. All right? So that's why there's a warning right there. So we need to remove this one. Okay? Now, let's jump to white spaces. When we talk about white spaces, okay, white spaces are, let's put it here. White spaces are spaces, tabs, and enter keys. Okay? So the rule here is any amount of white spaces in Java are irrelevant. We only make use of white spaces for readability purposes. So if you want to have a very long statement right here, okay, let's say I have sout, system.out.println right here. Let's say I have a statement like p1 dot, okay, get, by the way, this is called IntelliSense. I don't need to type the entire thing. Get name plus, comma, at age, and then plus, I'm going to type p1, and then dot, I'm going to display the age. All right. Now, if I press a few enter keys and a few tabs right here, okay, you will see that visually we have 2 lines, but in reality, that's only a single line because you only have 1 semicolon at the end. Okay. Also, the white spaces are meant for readability purposes. Okay, so let's say you have a very long equation or a very long statement that you need to type that can go beyond this red marking right here. This is basically your margin. If you want to print your code in a, let's say, a bond paper or a coupon band, this is where your marking is at. So if you have codes that will go beyond this red marking right here, chances are you might need to um, split them into two lines. So you'll be needing an extra next line character at the end to make them readable or make them fit inside your bond paper if you wanted to print them. Okay? So there's your spaces and tabs and enter keys. As far as Java is concerned, they're just they're irrelevant for Java. It's there for us to make our codes readable. Okay, next, let's discuss comments. Okay, so we're done with white spaces. Oh, okay, blocks and comments. Okay, blocks are normally place to group a set of statement. So if I want to group my main method, I'll be needing a pair of curly braces. If I want to group my class, I'll be needing a pair of curly braces. The curly braces also denotes a scope. Okay, so let's say in my setter, if I want to have an if block right here, let's say if, sorry, let me put this in my set age. Okay, let's say I have an if condition right here. If age is greater than or equal to 0, I'm going to accept this. Else, I'm going to set this dot age equals to 0. Okay, now sometimes when we code, we also forget the readability part. No? So this is where indentation comes in. Okay, so if you want your codes to be readable in the uh, eyes of a casual reader, you might want to format your code by honoring the indentation. So NetBeans will do that for you. So by right-clicking, we have format. Okay, try to observe this part right here as I click format. Okay? It will automatically insert the curly braces as a scope for you, and it will automatically indent the entire code for you. So you see that the scopes right here, or the curly braces right here, are used to group, in this example, your if block and your else block. Okay? And lastly, let's talk about comments. There are three types of comments in Java. We have the single line comment. Now, the single line comment starts with a double slash. The multi-line comment starts with slash star, and then it ends with star slash. And the Java doc comment starts with slash star star, and it ends with star slash. Okay? Now, multi-line comments are used to group a set of comments with multiple lines, like what you see here in line 1 and in line 5. This is what you call a multi-line comment. For single line comment, anything that starts with a double slash will be commented out after the double slash. So text or codes that is prefixed with the double slash will be taken out. Remember, comments are texts that is being ignored by your compiler. We normally use comments to put notes for us to remember what the coding is all about. And of course, this is the comment unique for Java. This is called the Java documentation comment. This is where you put, the Java documentation comment is where you put descriptions about your class, about your variables, about your constructors, and about your methods. Ideally, before we transfer or ship or deliver our application, we put Java documentation comments like right here. No, this is version, so I would say at, and then you'll see some of the ready-made annotations for us. This is version 1.0. And then I would say this code was videoed or was shot. You can also put since, or it was created since. So today is May 19, 2020. Okay, so you could put things like there, and the author is Lawrence. You can actually put this. No? You can edit this of learning while practicing. Right? Okay. Now we put this comments on top of each class, each method, each constructor to put a description on what the class, the method, or the constructor is all about. So this is, let's just put some comments here. This is the person class, and then we can also put a constructor on top of our Java documentation on top of our constructor. And if you type /** and press enter, you'll see that it will automatically make the construct for you. And then you could just start describing what this constructor is all about. So this is the default constructor. And then /**. Okay. So if it sees that there are certain parameters, you can now provide a description. So this constructor accepts a name and age value. And then you could describe what the name is all about. The person, object, name, and what the age is all about. The person, object, age. All right? And then, of course, you can also put them on top of your methods, regardless if it's a setter, a getter, or a helper method. So let's create. So you'll see that you have @return because this method will return an int. So return an int value for the person age. And then we could also put here age sets the person's age. Okay, so we can continue to do that all throughout the rest of your program. Okay, and then we could also do the same for our PSVM right here. And let's just put what is there. Okay, the method PSVM accepts a parameter args. Okay, so what's the purpose of our Java doc? Remember in the previous section when we talked about the API documentation? Whenever you create your project, you can also create your own API documentation by right-clicking and then choosing Generate Java Doc. So Java will now read your code, and here's your Java documentation. So for your person class, you have the person constructor, and you also have the other one. Okay, so these are the inputs that we've typed earlier. Okay, and these are the methods found under the person class. These are the constructors and the methods that we've typed. For the test person, these are, or this is the only method that you can find under the class test person. And remember, each class contains at least one constructor, and this is your default constructor right here for test person. Okay? So that's it for this video. In the next set of videos, we will discuss the concepts of import statement and packages. Hello, this is Lawrence of Learning While Practicing. In the past few videos, we've introduced the concepts of an IDE, or Integrated Development Environment. Also, we've created our first NetBeans project, and then we've talked about comments, semicolons, blocks, and whitespaces. For this video, we will now discuss the concept of the import statement and the package statement. Now, in creating a Java source code, okay, so your Java source file there are three things that you can put inside. Just remember the acronym PIC. Okay, we've already talked about what classes are. Okay, the P is for packages, and the I is for the import statements. Okay, so just remember PIC, package, import, and classes. For packages, you can have 0 or no package declaration to a maximum of 1 package declaration. So inside the Java source code, you can have no package declaration, or if you want to have a package declaration, you can only have a maximum of 1. For import statement, you can have 0 to many import statements. Same thing is true for classes. You can have 0 class declarations to as many class declarations as you want. The only rule there is if you have a public class, only 1 public class is allowed. Now, this arrangement inside your Java source code is also important. Packages, if it's present, should always come first. Import statement, if it's present, should always come before the class declarations. Okay, knowing that arrangement will help us create our Java source code correctly, whether you're using an IDE or not. But since we've already introduced the concept of IDEs, let's go back to our test project class or test project application. Our test person project currently consists of person.java and testperson.java. Now, ideally, when we deliver or when we write your Java source codes, we tend to group related Java source files together into certain folders. And grouping them into folders will make creation of your application easier because you're grouping related Java sources inside the same folder. So if you want to update, let's say, the UI, the user interface of your Java application, we can just focus on the folder that has or that contains all the GUI application or all the GUI codes. If you're focused on the reports, just focus your attention on one particular folder that creates all reports. So putting them together into the same folder is helpful for all developers. And these folders are also known as packages. So Java package is simply a folder. So in order for us to create a package, we can right click either uh, on the project name, then choose Java package, or you could click it under the source packages, new Java package. So I'm going to create 2 separate packages. For example, I'll create com.lwp.domain. Now, as you notice, as I type the package name, notice what's happening in the created folder section. Okay, so as I type focus your attention here, it automatically creates a folder called com. And then dot, there's a slash, and then LWP, and then there's another slash right there if I press period, and then I'll create a folder called domain. I'll click finish, and then I'll create another package. This time, I'll create the test package, com.lwp.test. Now, a package, by convention, it refers to your reversed URL. So, for example, if we have a URL like lwp.com, chances are I will use the package name lwp.test or com.lwp.test. Test here will contain your test codes, while domain will contain all your uh, your Java classes, your well-encapsulated classes. So in order for me to transfer my person.java inside the domain folder, I will just have to click and drag it right there. And then click on Refactor. Refactor means it will um, edit some of the things inside your Java source code so as not to create a compilation error. Let's do the same thing with the test project, right? Or test person.java here. I'll drag it here inside the test folder and then refactor. So right now I have two uh, packages. Let's take a look at our um, packages using our Finder window. So we have Netbeans Project, Test Person. I'll take a look at SRC. Now you see we have COM, LWP folders, COM, LWP folders, and these are the two additional folders, domain and test. So domain, you have your person.java, while test, you have your testperson.java. Also, inside your source code, package declaration was automatically placed by NetBeans. When you move your test person from the SRC folder down to the test package or COM LWP test. Also, since our test class makes use of the person class, it will automatically import the the said class. All right. Now, what if, let's say, what if I would like to accept some inputs regarding the identity of P1? So for P1, okay, I would like to accept an input from the user. So I'll say P1 dot, hold on, let's check person. We have setters and getters right here. Okay, so we also have two constructors. All right. So if I want to accept an input, I would be using the scanner class. So scanner s is equals to new scanner, and then I'll use system, hold on, system.in. Okay, and then I would close system.in here. So I open the stream in this line, and I'll need to close it. System.close. Unfortunately, this line of code causes a compilation error because it says the compiler right now doesn't know the scanner class. Who is the scanner class? It says cannot find symbol. So we know that the scanner class is found under java.util. We've used that before. So if we look at our API, I have an offline version of the API right here. I've bookmarked it. And let's take a look at java.util right there. And then let's go to scanner right here. So the scanner is under java.util. So instead of typing another import statement right here that will say import java.util.scanner, what we can do is to make use of NetBeans IntelliSense by right-clicking and then choosing fix imports. Fix imports will automatically import some of the classes that you're using in your source code. So if I click this, and the option or the suggestion is for you to import java.util.scanner. Although it has other scanner classes that can be found in other packages, but it will choose the nearest one. So if that suggestion is acceptable to you, just click OK. And there you go. Okay? So since we're ready to use the scanner class, we can now accept an input. We can now say sout, enter the name for P1. Okay, so, and then I'll say name or string name will get the value P1 or S dot, and then I'll use next method. And then S out, tab, I'll ask again, enter the age for P1. And then I'll say int age equals S dot. I'll just need to choose next int, enter. Okay, so after accepting the respective names and age, let's set them to their respective setters. I'll say P1 dot set name. I'll set the name right there, which I've already accepted in this line, line 29. Then I'll say P2 dot set age, and then I'll accept the age. And then there's no need for me to do anything else because right here I've already called their getters for printing. So no more red markings on all parts. Okay, checking there. Let's save this one and right click, run. Okay, so we okay, here's the output. Enter the name for P1. Let's say Lawrence. Oh, we already have Lawrence. Let's say Joe. Enter. Enter age for P1. Let's say Joe is 10 years old. So Joe, oops, at age 0. Why do we have Joe at age 0? We have set age. Oh, sorry. We've used P2 that set age. I need to choose P1 that set age right there. Okay, let's do that again. Save. Okay, and then right click. Okay, notice again, for P1, we haven't set the identity of P1 yet, but P2, Lawrence is at age 20. So P1, let's give P1 a name, Joe, and P1, this time we're using P1 that's at age. Joe will be age 10. So Joe at age 10, while Lawrence is at age 20. Okay? So the package statement is said to group if you have more than one or probably more classes that are domain that are well encapsulated class, you might have multiple classes here or Java source codes in this folder. So our test class, we have it here inside the test folder. So if you want to group your classes together, you might need to have packages. And in order for you to gain access to those classes in their respective packages, we need to import them. Same thing is true with your standard API. Your standard API are grouped into several packages. For example, if I would like to know more about classes and interfaces that is in charge for creating Java applets, I would probably look for java.applet package. And these are the classes and interfaces found in Java applet. If I want to um, access classes that is involved in GUI or graphical user interface creation, I will take a look at AWT package. All right, and event handling, I'll take a look at this. If I want to create codes that are in charge with input and output, I'll probably look at java.io package. And every time you use any of these classes, be sure that you import them. So import, you can either use the fully qualified name. So fully qualified name means java.util, this is the package name, and the actual name of the class. This is what we call the fully qualified name. Or we can substitute scanner with an asterisk. Asterisk means all classes found under java.util. They're essentially the same. The only package that you are not required to import are or is the java.lang package. Java.lang package are by default accessible to you. All right, so this has been Lawrence of Learning While Practicing. I hope to see you in our next video. Hello, this is Lawrence of Learning While Practicing. For this video, we will discuss the different types of Java data types. There are two major classifications of data types in Java. We have what we call the reference data types, and the second one is what we call the primitive data types. For this video, we will just focus on the discussion of the 8 primitive data types. Reference data types will be discussed in another section. In Java, there are only 8 primitive data types. So if you hear a data type that is not included in the 8, we can consider that as a reference data type. These data types, the reference data types, will be discussed in a different section. Okay, let's now discuss the primitive data types. They're divided into 4 major classifications: the integral types, the floating points, the textual, and the last one, the logical. Let's discuss the integral types first. When we talk about integral data types, these are whole number values, and these values may have both negative, positive, including 0 numbers. So basically, they are whole number values. Let's say, if you can think of a number, let's say your age, let's say 20, that's an integral type. Or probably a negative number, for example, -5, that's also an integral type. Now, integral types are divided into 4 types. You have your byte, short, int, and long. Now, all of these 4 data types, these byte, short, int, and long, are all whole number values. The only difference is the amount of memory space that they occupy. Also, their ranges. So for byte, it only occupies 8 bits of memory spaces, while short occupies 16 bits, int occupies 32 bits, and of course long occupies 64 bits. With the amount of memory spaces that each data type occupies, they have different sets of ranges. So for byte, which is 8 bits, you have the minimum value starting from -2 raised to the 7th power up to +2 raised to the 7th power minus 1. If we will translate this, this is -128 up to +127. Now, knowing the actual range value is quite challenging, so it's better to understand their exponential range value compared with their expanded range value, because their range value has something to do with their number of memory bits that they occupy. So, for short, if it is 16-bit wide, the range value is from -2 raised to the 15th. You see that there's always a deduction of 1 in the exponent, up to +2 raised to the 15th minus 1. And for int, the range is from -2 raised to the 31st, because it is a 32-bit data. And you also have the maximum value from -2 raised to the 31st minus 1. As for the long data type, it's 64 bits wide, so the range is from -2 raised to the 63rd up to +2 raised to the 63rd minus 1. It's really easy for us to memorize all of this. Just remember BSIL, BSIL, byte, short, int, long, and the data range, or the amount of bit space that they occupy, starts with 8 times 2, 16 times 2, 64, and times 2, 6. Sorry, 8, 16 times 2, that's 32, then times 2, 64. Okay? So aside from their range, it's also worth mentioning their different types of format. For integral types, we have the base 10 format, or our usual decimal number. For base 8, you have octal, base 16, hexadecimal, and base 2, we have binary. A decimal digit is always the default form, I guess, in most programming languages. Oh, right. Among these four, the default is int. So if you hear a number, for example, 100 or 1,000 or -2, it's always safe to assume that it is an int unless declared otherwise. As for the form or the format, if you write a number, it's by default a decimal. But if you want to represent an integral value as an octal number, we need to prefix it with 0 followed by valid octal numbers. As we know that octal numbers ranges from 0 to 7 only. So 077, that's a valid octal number. As for hexadecimal number, these are base 16 numbers. The valid hexadecimal numbers are 0 to 9 and A to F. That's number 10 up to 15. So hexadecimal can be written by prefixing it with 0x followed by valid hexadecimal numbers. And of course, you have the binary format. The binary format was recently introduced in Java SE7. A number that starts with 0B, B, it can be a capital B or a small b, followed by a series of ones and zeros, is actually a binary number. Now, another feature in Java SE7 that is worth mentioning is the underscore. The underscore can now be used as a part of the literal value. So for example, you have, let's say, your bank account number, okay? So, or your credit card number. So if you have a long data type, let's say credit card number, which is usually 16 digits long. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 16 digits long. Let's put a capital L here. For long values, it's ideal to put capital or small l as a suffix to designate that this number is really a long value. Now, sometimes reading 16 numbers that are grouped together is quite challenging, especially if you have a poor eyesight. So to make it more readable, we can group them by 4. So if you notice your credit cards, these digits are grouped by 4. Now in Java, we cannot really put spaces in between. Okay, that is simply not allowed. What we can do to make it more readable is to put an underscore separator per group of number. Now, in Java SE7 onwards, the underscores are actually not, it doesn't really bother the compiler. It becomes a way for the casual reader to easily read this bunch of numbers. All right? So just remember, BSIL, byte short, int long. That's for your integral type. Now, the other type of primitive data type are what we call the floating points. As for the integral type, int is the default. For floating points, the default one is double. When you say floating point, these are values that may contain decimal places. So for example, 1.23f or 3.14, these are floating point values. In Java, there are two types. You have the float, which is 32-bit data, and you also have double, which is a 64-bit data. The default, like what we mentioned, is a double. So if you see a number, let's say 0.012, that's already a double value. If you wanted to furtherly declare that it is a double, you can put a capital or a small d at the end. But this is actually optional. There's no really need for this. It's just that if you wanted the user, casual reader, to see if it's a double value, or for them to um, declare or see that it's a double value, you can put a capital or small d. But again, that's just a redundancy, because by default, floating points have decimal places. And by default, they are considered as double. Just like this, 3.14, which is the value of pi, that's already a double. Now, if you wanted to declare a floating point, it is better to put a capital or a small f as a suffix. Because without the f, Java will translate this decimal value as a double, which occupies 64-bit, but you're storing it to a floating point 32-bit value or variable. So you might end up having a compilation error if we declare a float without an f. Another way to declare a floating point value is by putting a set of numbers and then suffixing it with e, either capital or small e. This means it's an exponential form. So we have the integral types, we have the floating points. The third one is what we call the textual types. Textual types are characters. We only have one type. We have the char, which is a 16-bit Unicode value. In Java, we're not using, sorry, it's a 16-bit Unicode value, right? That's correct. In Java, we don't use ASCII values anymore. What we use are Unicode values, which is wider because it's 16-bit wide. And ASCII is only 8-bit wide. Not to worry, because ASCII is just a subset of the Unicode. Now, there are three ways to declare a character. You can actually put a character inside a pair of single quotes, or you could also represent a character value using the backslash symbol, like, for example, backslash t. In some books, they call this the non-printable character or the escape sequence character. And the last one is by using the Unicode notation. It starts with the backslash u. Remember earlier when I said that we're not using ASCII anymore? Because ASCII values are quite limited. In Java 1.0, Java used to have ASCII as its primary coding system. But starting Java 1.1, in order for them to have an internationalization support for other languages aside from the English language, they decided to use Unicode values. So if you have a value that would like to print, let's say that it's not a part of the ASCII, you can use the Unicode notation. Let's say for Greek letters, we can designate this as backslash u 03A6. So the backslash u is the Unicode notation prefix, and then the following values should be in hexadecimal format. And again, these three types should be enclosed inside a pair of single quotes, which is a character. And of course, the last one are logical types. A logical type is, we also have just one called Boolean. The Boolean primitive data type has only two possible values. It can either have a true or a false value. Take note that these are written in small letters. A common mistake by C programmers that um, immediately dive into Java is sometimes they think of a Boolean value as a integer value, because in C, a logical true means non-zero and a logical false means zero. But in Java, we use the actual value true and false. So this is a common mistake that some developers make. So Boolean, door is open is equal to false, and then if they want to open it, they say door is open plus plus. This one right here will cause a compilation error. Okay, because in Java, we're using Boolean, and plus plus is a numeric operator. So if you want to toggle the value of door is open, and currently it is false, if you want to toggle it, you say not false. So putting the exclamation point in front will toggle the Boolean value. This operator is called the Boolean toggle. So everything that is true will become false, and everything that is false will become true. All right? So that's it for our video. We've talked about primitive data types. And in our next video, we will now relate these primitive types to the scanner object that we've been using for the past few videos to accept inputs. This has been Lawrence of Learning While Practicing. See you in our next video. Hello, this is Lawrence of Learning While Practicing. For this video, we will discuss the concept of the scanner object. The scanner object can be found in the java.util package. So whenever we call the scanner class, we need to import it. Inside the scanner object, there are several next methods that is used in accepting inputs from the keyboard or from any other data source. It can be an input from the keyboard, it can be input from a file, or it can be an input from a series of text inputs. In Java, we have several data types, and in the previous video, we've discussed the 8 primitive data types. You have your byte all the way down to Boolean in this list. String is not a primitive data type. Instead, it is a reference data type. So since we have different types of inputs that we can accept in Java, scanner is a way for us to accept a formatted input, which means whenever you start typing or start accepting those input, a specific format is already applied to it. For strings, you have 2 methods to choose from. You can either use next or next line. The difference is if you want to accept a single string value without any spaces in the middle, you can use next. But let's say you're accepting an input, a string input, that may or may not have a space in the middle, you can use next line for that. An example would be your full name. So let's say you're going to enter your first name, space, last name. It's better to use next line for that. For numeric inputs, you have next byte, next short, next int, and next long. For floating point inputs, you have next float and next double. For a character input, what we normally do is we accept a string first, and then we extract the first character from that input. That's why we have char at 0. Char at 0 means character at position 0. And then, of course, we have Boolean. We will use next Boolean for that. So the best way to learn is while practicing. So let's try to put that into code. Let's go to NetBeans. Let's create a new project. The category will be Java and a Java application. Click on Next. Let's call this Scanner Test Project. All right. And then let's create a new Java class. Let's call this as Test Scanner. Okay, and then click Finish. Okay. So the nice thing about IDEs is there are ready-made templates. For example, if I type in PSVM and then I press Tab, it will automatically expand to public static void main string args. All right, let's set up our scanner object. So we'll type in scanner. We'll call that object as S, and then instantiate that object by calling its constructor, new scanner. Then we pass an input stream object called system.in. Now, system.in is a way for us to accept an input from the keyboard. Okay, so I'll press enter. Okay, so you'll notice that there is a red marking on the left, on the middle, on the upper right, and on the middle right. This corresponds to one error. And the error is, since scanner belongs to java.util, we need to import it. So we can either right-click and then fix import, or we can click on this light bulb right here And then we can add an import for Java that util scanner. This is one of the suggestions. And then there you go. You already have a ready-made import statement. Now, just like any other thing in life, anything that you open, ideally, you close it. So if you open a light bulb, normally or ideally, you close that light bulb. If you open your microwave oven, ideally, you close it. If you open a database connection, ideally, you close that connection. If you open a network port, it's ideal to close that port as well. So in Java, in this example, we're opening a scanner object. So it's better to say s.close before the program ends. This one closes the stream method or the scanner object. So in the middle, we can now start asking for inputs. For example, if I want to ask for the full name, I will type system.out.println or SOUT, and then I'll press tab. There you go. It automatically expands. So let's ask for the user's full name. Enter your full name. Okay, so let's give him a pattern. First name and last name. Okay, so since this is a string, we'll say string name. Okay, we'll say s dot. All right, which one would you like us to use? Should we use next or next line? If you say next line, then you're correct because full name, your first name and your last name normally has a space in the middle. So we would probably use next line for that. Because if you only use next, you're just accepting the string before the space. Okay, and then let's ask for, let's say, the age. SOUT, how old are you? Okay, so since it's an integer age, we will use s dot next int because we're accepting an integer value. And then we can also ask for the gender. Okay, gender is normally represented by a single character. So SOUT, what is your gender? And then we're going to ask for either an M or an F, male or female. Since it's a gender, it's only a character. All right, so we'll say s dot next dot car at, we'll get the first value, car at 0. Oh, this is called gender. All right, there we go. So it's about time for us to um, display the output. Okay, so we can say SOUT, hello, and then the name. Okay, we can say comma, and then next year you'll be, let's say, age plus 1. Years old. Okay, so we would like to accept a name and an age input, and then the gender, and then we will display just the name and the age, and then the incremented age. So let's save this one, right click, and then run file. Okay, enter your full name. Okay, let's say Lawrence space Decamora. Okay, how old are you? Let's say 40 years old. Okay, let's say male. Hello, Lawrence Decamora. Next year you'll be 41 years old. Okay, now I would suggest you create your own program, and you may want to try out these other next methods on your program. Try to accept, let's say, a double value probably your height or your weight, or a Boolean value that will accept a true or a false input. Use the corresponding next method in your next program. This has been Lawrence of Learning While Practicing. I will see you on our next session.